Hi guys and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. Today we are talking about true wireless earphones coming from the company called Status, and the model is called Between 3A and C. So if you remember my review of Moondrop Alice true wireless earphones, and I found out that they sound close enough to wired alternatives that I would actually use them myself because of great convenience that they bring. But I did promise these to my girlfriend, so yeah, she got them and I was stuck with wires. But today I have Status Between 3A and C here. And these go for $250, which is slightly pricier, some $60 pricier than Moondrop Alice that I've just mentioned. But to be perfectly honest, I like their styling more. It's more man-like, if I am allowed to say that. With this really nice, sharp, kinda industrial but still stylish look. There's a little bit of high-quality plastic, a little bit of aluminum. Then the part that comes in contact with your ear and your earlobes is some sort of really nice soft touch, plasticky or rubbery material. It's more rubbery-like. But funnily enough, both ear canals and ear tips are slightly oval, not perfectly circular, like we find on most earphones. Controlling these is quite easy. On both of these you have a physical button on top and also a touch-sensitive button on the side. Now combinations of all of these, tapping twice, holding, let you control the volume, pause, play, previous track, next track, and holding this physical button actually enables you to circle between modes of operation that this earphone have. And these modes are quite important because it's what sets this set of earphones apart from just your usual true wireless. So you can use three modes. One is just a default. When the driver, actually drivers, because there's three drivers in each earphone, they just play your music and all isolation is achieved passively and mechanically. But then we have active noise cancellation, /A and C in the name, and once you enter that mode, these actively suppress noise from your surrounding up to 38 dB. And this mode is actually working well. I like how it works. It doesn't create that vacuum feeling of, for example, Bose earphones that I've tried several years ago. I don't know how current Bose models behave, but I didn't like that just air sucking feeling that I'm just in the vacuum of how Bose operates. These are not like that. When I enable A and C, I don't feel any negative and weird effects. I just notice that when I'm listening to the music and I try to produce any sort of environmental noise, like knocking on the table, it's really attenuated nicely. So I can say that this mode works quite well. It's a good active noise cancellation, but not overcooked and overdone. And the third mode is a transparency mode. So the earphone is basically picking up environmental noises and things happening around you and just letting them through, slightly amplifying them so you can hear things around you better than in just normal default passive mode when nothing is engaged. But the interesting thing is that using this physical button, you circle between active noise cancellation and transparency mode. And at first I was like, can I please disable both of these? And yes, you can, but you have to use a control app on your phone to do that. For some reason, I don't know why. I would just add that as a third option in this circle with the physical button. And while mentioning control app, aside from enabling or disabling transparency or ANC mode, you can also choose different settings like EQ settings. By default, there's one called Status Signature. And to my ears, that one sounded a little bit too V-shaped for my taste. Really boomy bass, really emphasized highs, but retracted mids, and that felt a little bit unnatural to me. But there is audiophile, a profile, that I liked much more. With that one, all frequencies fall in much better together and integrate together across the frequency spectrum, at least in my opinion. I like more realistically sounding tuning than that default one, which is really bassy and I suppose aiming at like bass heads and people that really like that V-shaped response. But you can also just switch to manual EQ and set it whichever way you like. Next, battery. These have quite decent battery life, so earphones themselves will last you around 8 hours if you're using ANC or transparency mode, and up to 12 hours if you're not using any of these modes, which is actually my preferred mode, but I'll talk about why just in a minute. Then this dock has its battery also, and you charge it through USB-C, and I think it holds like 4 recharges of the earphones until you have to recharge the dock itself. I can personally go for weeks without recharging the dock. Lastly, before going to the sound quality, ergonomics and how these fit in your ears is something very subjective. But personally, for me, I really like these. They have slightly longer protruding neck and this thin side part. And I like that because my ears are big and kinda deep. So these are perfect. They do not rub my ears or put pressure on any annoying places or anything like that. I just like how they fit and how they stay secure once I put them there. Now let's talk sound. And to talk about the sound, I have to tell you this. It will vary a little bit depending on the mode of operation you choose. For example, if you choose to use active noise cancellation, the sound stage will be slightly narrower and more congested, and the sound will still be very clear and focused, but not as rich and wide and just easygoing as if you're not using active noise cancellation. The same goes for transparency mode that influences the sound a little bit. You lose a little bit of fine focus. It feels like everything's softened a little bit, but it's still open and airy, unlike active noise cancellation that congested the sound a little bit. Transparency mode doesn't do that, but it does become a little bit brighter and softer, especially in the bass line, compared to default non-augmented mode. And this is not happening because something is not done right with this model. It's simply physics. If you ask your drivers that are producing the sound inside of the earphones to reproduce music only and nothing else, they'll do it with a certain level of quality. But then if you say, okay, now monitor everything happening around me and actively suppress that noise by playing all that noise in a different polarity. That's how active noise cancellation works, by the way. So that means you're putting much more work on the drivers and something else to do while they're playing your music. Some more information and more complexity needs to be covered with the same drivers. So it's inevitable. That said, the difference is not huge. Both of these modes are done well, and using them you still get pretty good sound fidelity out of these earphones. For me personally, I really liked the default one without anything turned on. The tonality that way is definitely really good. And the bass line is still really authoritative. It's very punchy. Sub-bass has a lot of kick and grunt. And I have to say that I'm not really a big fan of Beyoncé, but I was listening to Tidal and one Beyoncé song came and I listened to it and it sounded really engaging and the bass was rumbling with great depth and really good control too. And that song will be important when I go to comparisons. But for now, I also wanted to say that upper frequencies like mid-range and highs were also done really well. So her vocal sounded quite nice, and highs are present, they're revealing, they're well extended, and between trees they walk fine line between being really nicely focused and positively sharp with how they resolve just edges, and then not doing that in an overcooked way. So for example, when there's a guitar string pluck, it will sound energetic and very crisp and focused. But if I listen to some sort of older rock and roll music, I don't feel that cymbals are crushing so hard to hurt my ears. Everything is just nicely judged. And the sound staging is really decent, especially in the default mode without any augmentations. I feel that separation of the instruments and the sensation of empty space around them is quite good. Once you engage active noise cancellation, that congests a little bit, and then you feel that it's more in between your ears than it radiates around your head, like the default non-augmented mode does. And transparency mode also does radiate a little bit more and sounds wider and more spacious. So only active noise cancellation retracts the soundstage a little bit, but everything is still quite resolving and clear and tidy. It's just in a smaller space. Now, moving to comparisons, I compared these directly to Moondrop Alice that I reviewed recently, and these are $189, so price-wise they're quite comparable. Especially now, at the moment, I think I saw Between 3 A and C are on a sale at $199 instead of $250. I'm not sure if it's still happening, but I think it is, because I checked like last evening or something like that. So at least at this moment of this review, they should be quite close price-wise. But on any other day, Between 3s are like $60 more expensive. That said, the differences. First of all, one very important functional difference is that Moondrop Alice does not have active noise cancellation. The only thing that they have is some sort of virtual soundstage that expands the soundstage a little bit by using some sort of DSP or something like that, but no active noise cancellation. So it was most fair to compare their default non-augmented modes, and I did that. Now, first thing that I noticed in that Beyoncé song, that I just cannot remember the name of that song, I'm sorry, I usually put that on the screen. But I noticed that Between 3 has much deeper, fuller and more authoritative bass line. And that especially goes for the sub-bass. It's so grunty and kicky and has real slam, the way that Moondrop Alice just cannot counter. But above that, in the mid-range and highs, both of these retrieve quite similar amount of details. They're equally resolving, they're similarly wide and spacious and airy, but Alice definitely has less bass, so everything feels slightly more tilted towards high frequencies. And because of that, it sounds brighter and sometimes even airier, but it lacks impact and full bodiness that Between 3 has. It's not only about the tonality, Between 3 is also more dynamic overall. It has more of that kick and attack and more energetic leading edges, whereas Moondrop Alice sounds like softer overall. It's a little bit softer around the edges, it's a little bit flatter with dynamics, and it's definitely noticeably less authoritative with the bass line. So I have to give this round to Between 3 A and C, because that authority coming from the lower end also influences how vocals sound, how instruments sound. Everything is just more palpable and it feels more physically believable. And having that in mind, and also the fact that Between 3 comes with a really decent A and C mode, I think it more than justifies the price difference. Now, for the last part of this video, I'll once again talk about wires. I'm actually quite surprised at how close, sound fidelity-wise, is this model to anything that I can assemble for the same amount of money that includes wires. And if really done right, that kind of pairing with external DAC and earphones could give you a little bit more kick and resolution, but the difference is really not huge. And you would be stuck with something like this, like dongle hanging out of your pockets and then wiring, and all of that can become a little bit messy, or more messy in my case. And I'm truly thinking more and more each day that it's just not worth it. True wireless earphones started as a comfort thing. First models that I've tried, coming from some like commercial brands like Sony or Apple or things like that, I wasn't happy with their sound. And I was like, wires forever. But you know, as every technology, it matures. And now, while I was testing these, I was definitely realizing I like them. I like them a lot. I like the comfort. I like the feeling of being completely free of these tangling wires. And the sound fidelity of these is on a high level enough that I simply think that I'm going to use them from now on when I go outside. The difference between them and a price-appropriate wired system is not big enough for me to sacrifice this comfort and this ease of use. Because in their default non-augmented mode, they do sound great. And if by any chance I am in a really noisy environment, I have active noise cancellation, which can be really helpful. Yes, you do sacrifice just a little bit of sound fidelity that way, but it's better to sacrifice a little bit of sound fidelity than to sacrifice more than half of what you can hear, because the environment is so noisy that you cannot hear your own earphones. So yes, for me personally, this is a breaking point. From now on, I'll probably, most of the times, when I'm outside and I just want portable solution that sounds really good, it doesn't have to be the best for that exact amount of money, but it's still really, really good, I'll be using wireless earphones. Because the overall comfort and ease of use is simply not comparable. I just love being free of cables. And with that, it's time to end today's video. Now tell me your thoughts. What do you think about wireless earphones? Are you already using them? Are you ready to try to jump on that train? Or maybe you're like wires forever kind of person. Leave your comments down below and stay tuned for the next review. See you. Bye.